Good day everyone, I am Rachel Jean Culpa. Today we embark on a journey to explore three remarkable nations within this dynamic region, Laos, Myanmar, and Philippines. But before we start our discussion, here's the learning objectives. At the end of this lesson, students should be able to identify the geographical location of Laos, Myanmar, and Philippines, locate the absolute location of three countries, and analyze the historical overview. The name of the country is spelled the same as plural dominant ethnic group, which is the Lao people. Laos is bounded to the north by China, to the northeast and east by Vietnam, to the south by Cambodia, and to the west by Thailand, and to the northwest by Myanmar. So as you can see here, this is the physical map of Laos. So the Annamite Range running along its eastern border, separating it from Vietnam, and to the west, the country is bounded by the Mekong River, separated it from Thailand. So Laos, the total area of Laos is 236,800 kilometers squared. So Laos is given by the Indochina time, which is the UTC plus 7. Laos with a latitude of 19.8563 degree north and 102.4955 degree east. For the history overview of Laos, it began in the ancient kingdom. So, the history of Laos dates back to the ancient times when various kingdoms and ethnic groups inhabited the region, exerted influence over parts of Laos from the 9th century to the 13th century. The Khmer Empire centered Cambodia, exerted an influence over parts of Laos from the 9th century to 13th century. So, followed by Lansang, the Kingdom of Lansang was founded in the 14th century by King Fangun. So, it became a powerful and prosperous state that controlled much of Laos and parts of the neighboring countries. So, Lansang, it became a powerful and prosperous state that controlled much of present-day Laos and parts of the neighboring countries. Followed by the French colonial rule. In the late 19th century, Laos became part of French Indochina. So French colonial rule persisted until World War II, during which Laos briefly fell under Japanese control. French colonial rule in the late 19th century, Laos, along with neighboring Vietnam and Cambodia, became part of French Indochina. So, French colonial rule brought about significant changes in terms of administration, infrastructure, and culture. However, it also led to the exploration of local resources and a growing sense of nationalism among the Laotian people. Path to independence. After the World War II, Laos began its struggle for independence from French colonial rule. The First Indochina War began in 1946 and ended in 1954, led to the Geneva Accords, which granted Laos partial independence as a constitutional monarchy. Path to independence. So after the World War II, Laos embarked on its path to independence from French colonial rule. So the Indochina War played a crucial role in this process. So, the Geneva Accords of 1954 granted Laos a partial independence as a constitutional monarchy, but it also became a battleground during the broader conflict between the United States and the Soviet Union. Modern Laos, present-day Laos, is known for its stunning natural landscape, rich cultural heritage, and a growing tourism industry. While it has made progress in the various areas, it still faces challenges related to development and human rights. So, present-day Laos boasts beautiful landscapes and a vibrant culture fueling its growing tourism sector. So, however, the nation grapples with development obstacles and human rights issues. Balancing progress with these challenges is crucial for a brighter future in this enhancing Southeast Asian nation. Laos is a diverse country with a rich history of ethnic groups. So, the 55% of it is the Lao, which is the Lao Lum, are the majority ethnic group. So, the history of Lao Lum dates back the centuries with the establishments of various Laos kingdoms, including the Lansang dynasty, and the second one, which is the Mo. So, they live in the relative isolation in the mountains, preserving their unique customs and languages. And the third one, which is the Hmong, were known as skilled farmers and traders, and the 26% of it is the other ethnic groups in Laos. Karabang followed. So this dynasty continued the legacy of promoting Buddhism and cultural traditions. So overall, these dynasties shaped the country's identity and left a lasting impact on its history. Laos referred to as the land of a million elephants due to its historical significance and association with elephants. And also, Laos is the most bombed country in the world. So, during the Vietnam War or the Secret War, the United States dropped about 270 million bombs in Laos and making it the most bombed country in the world. So, that is equivalent of one plane load of bombs every 8 minutes, 24 hours a day for 9 years. So as you can see here, this is the map of Laos, and the red dots represent the bombs dropped by the United States. So the primary reason of the United States is to disrupt the enemy supply lines, which is the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Linguistic diversity of Laos. There are five linguistic diversity of Laos, which are the Hmong, Hmo, Vietnamese, Hakka, and Lao. Laos is known for its rich linguistic diversity, with over 80 different languages spoken throughout the country. So the Hmong language varieties are spoken by the Hmong ethnic group in Laos. The Mo people have their own language, which is the part of the Austroasiatic language family, and the Vietnamese, due to its historical migration, Vietnamese is spoken by a minority of people in Laos. Hakka is a Chinese language that belongs to the Sino-Tibetan language family. So it's known for its distinct pronunciation and vocabulary compared to other Chinese languages like Mandarin or Cantonese. So the Hakka-speaking community in Laos may have retained their language due to their cultural heritage and historical ties to China. So the dominant language of Laos, which is called the Lao, is the official language and widely understood. Many ethnic minorities primarily speak their own languages within their community. So, this linguistic diversity is a reflection of Laos' multicultural society. As you can see here, the green color represents the dynasty map of Laos. Uh, this is the religious developments of Laos. So, introduction of Buddhism was introduced to the region that is now Laos around 7th to 13th century CE. Buddhism was introduced to the region. However, it took several centuries for Buddhism to firmly establish itself as a prominent religious practice in the country. Second, the traditional animism. So, alongside Buddhism, many Laotians also practice traditional animistic beliefs. So, these beliefs involve spirits and supernatural forces that are thought to inhabit various natural elements such as trees, rivers, and mountains. Lao people often incorporate animistic rituals into their Buddhist practice, creating a unique blend of spirituality. Second, the traditional animism. So, alongside Buddhism, many Laotians also practice traditional animistic beliefs. So, these beliefs involve spirits and supernatural forces that are thought to inhabit various natural elements such as trees, rivers. Syncretism. This blending of religious tradition can be seen in various ceremonies and rituals, which often incorporate elements of both Buddhism and animism. Syncretism. So, Laos has a rich history of religious syncretism. So, where Buddhism has merged with indigenous beliefs and practices, this syncretic approach is visible in various ceremonies and rituals, which often incorporate elements of both Buddhism and animism. So, these blending traditions reflects the cultural diversity of Laos. And lastly, the historical shift. So, experience period of religious change due to historical events, including French colonialism, which influenced some Christian conversions in certain areas. The historical shift. So, Laos has experienced significant religious changes influenced by historical events. So, during the period of French colonialism, there were instances of Christian conversions in certain areas, showcasing how external influences have impacted the religious landscapes of the country. Colonial rule by the French. So Laos became a part of French Indochina in the late 19th century. The French established control over Laos and integrated it into their colonial administration. So the French colonial rule had a significant impact on the social and cultural fabric of Laos. Laos gained independence from French colonization in 1954. Following the First Indochina War, the Geneva Accords recognized Laos as a sovereign nation, ending 67 years of French rule. This historic event marked the beginning of Laos' journey as an independent nation in Southeast Asia. So, since gaining independence from France in 1954, Laos has experienced several changes in its government and political landscape. The post-independence of governance or Kingdom of Laos, Laotian Civil War, and the Pathet Lao takeover, and Lao People's Democratic Republic. New Kingdom of Laos. So after achieving independence in 1954, Laos initially functioned as a constitutional monarchy with King Sisavangvong as the head of state and Prince Suvarnabhumak as the prime minister. So after the Kingdom of Laos, Laotian Civil War has a larger conflict in Southeast Asia during the Cold War era. It involved various functions, including the Royal Lao government. So, Pathet Lao took over in 1975. In 1975, the Communist Pathet overthrew the Royal Lao government. This led to the establishment of the Lao People's Democratic Republic, a one-party socialist state. So, after the establishment of Pathet Lao takeover, Lao People's Democratic Republic in 1975 up until now, so Laos has been under the control of the Lao People's Revolutionary Party, a single party system. So Quezon Pomvi Hain and the Kamtai Sephadon served as the country's top leaders. Lambong is a traditional Lao dance that holds a special place in the country's culture and is commonly performed during various celebrations and festivals. Mulam is a traditional style of music in Laos, especially popular in the northeastern regions. It features lyrics often related to rural life, love, and nature accompanied by instruments. So the economic history of Laos began in the pre-independence, followed by the post-independence and the integration into Asian and globalization, which began in 2000 and up until now. So, before gaining independence from French colonial rule, Laos had an agrarian economy primarily based on agriculture. So, the period following independence was the post-independence was marked by political instability, involvement, and regional conflict disrupted economic development because of the Vietnam War. The economic instability were prominent feature of this period. So when Laos joined the Association of Southeast Asian Nation, economic reform and openness to foreign investments began. So the key aspects of the Laotian economy during this period are natural resources, and tourism, global trade, and agriculture. So as you can see here, this is the trade route map of Laos. They trade to the other countries like China, Vietnam, Myanmar, Thailand, Cambodia, and other countries. So, so when Konla dynasty and Luang Prabang dynasty promote Buddhism, and up until now, Buddhism is the major religion in Laos. So Buddhism emphasizes harmony, balance, and interconnectedness with nature. So Buddhism encourages people to live in a way that respects both themselves and the world around them. It draws inspiration, which promotes compassion and pursuit of inner peace. And now let's proceed to Myanmar. So Myanmar was formerly known as Burma but was officially renamed in 1989 by the military government. The change aimed to recognize the country's diverse ethnic groups and distance itself from the colonial history. So Myanmar is the Burmese pronunciation, while Burma derived from the dominant Burma ethnic group, so causing ongoing controversy. Myanmar to the north, it borders China. To the east, it shares borders with Laos and Thailand. So, as you can see here, this is the physical map of Myanmar. So, Myanmar lies along the Shan Plateau, dominating the east, and the country is nestled between several mountain ranges with the Arakan Mountain on the west. So, Myanmar with a latitude of 21,9162 degree north and 95,9560 degree east. So, the time zone of Myanmar is UTC plus 6. So, the historical overview of Myanmar began in the ancient civilization, followed by the Bagan Empire, British colonial rule, and the military rule. Ancient civilization, Myanmar's history dates back to the ancient times, so with evidence of human habitation as early as 11,000 years ago. The few city-states in the central region flourished from the 1st to the 9th century, while the Mon people established the kingdom of Saton in the south. So, Bagan Empire, which ruled from the 9th to 13th century, is renowned for building thousands of temples and pagodas on the Bagan Plains. It was a center of Buddhism. So, British colonial rule, the British Empire gradually extended its control over Myanmar in the 19th century, making it the province of British India. And lastly, the military rule. Myanmar was under the military rule from 1962, was known as 1962 to 2011. So during this period, it was known as Burma. The military junta changed the country's name to Myanmar in 1989. Myanmar, referred to as the Golden Land, has a rich history that dates back to the ancient times. So the reason why Myanmar called the Golden Land, because there's a lot of pagodas and temple in Myanmar, the beautiful religious temples. Ethnic and linguistic diversity of Myanmar are Burman, Shan, Karen, Rakhine, Chinese, Mon, Indian, and others. So, as you can see here, Burman is the major ethnic and linguistic in Myanmar, followed by the Shan and the Karen, and 5% of it is the other ethnic and linguistic in Myanmar. And this is the map, which is the um, ethnic in Myanmar arrived. The early kingdoms and empire in Myanmar are few kingdoms, which began in 200 BCE to 1050 CE, followed by the Bagan Empire and Tuango Dynasty. Few kingdoms were ruled by independent chiefs. The chiefs styled themselves as king. This kingdom developed city-states and engaged trade and agriculture. Second one is the Bagan Empire, one of the most powerful and influential dynasties in Myanmar. It was known for its extensive temple building. The famous temples is the Soli Pagoda, and the last lastly is the Taungoo dynasty. It established by King Mingyan Yu, and it promotes Buddhism. So the British colonization of Myanmar include the three Anglo-Burmese wars. So first is the first Anglo-Burmese war began in 1842, 1824 and 1826. Second Anglo-Burmese war in 1852, and third Anglo-Burmese war in 1885. The first Anglo-Burmese war resulted in the signing of the Treaty of Yandabu, which ceded territory to the British. This war began due to disputes over British interest in Southeast Asia, and ended with the signing of the Treaty of Yandabu. So under this treaty, Burma, which is now Myanmar, ceded territory of the British, including parts of the Assam and Manipur, and recognized British control over some regions. The Second Anglo-Burmese War led to the annexation of Lower Burma by the British. So, the Second War was primarily driven by economic and political factors. It resulted in the annexation of Lower Burma by British. This meant that the British gained control over the southern portion of Myanmar, including the valuable part of Pur City, which is Third Anglo-Burmese War resulted in the complete annexation of Upper Burma, making Myanmar a province of British India. So, the Third War was triggered by various factors, including British concerns over Burma's internal stability and British expansionist policies. It concluded with the British occupying Mandalay and formally annexing Upper Burma. This move effectively made by Myanmar a province of British India, bringing the entire country under British colonial rule. So, during the British rule, Myanmar economy was transformed with the cultivation of rice, becoming a major export. However, the colonization also had a negative impacts, including a social and political unrest. Myanmar gained independence from British colonization on January 4, 1948. So after nearly a century of British rule, marked by the economic changes. The religious dynamics in Myanmar are Buddhism, Islam, Christianity, and indigenous beliefs. Buddhism is the dominant religion in Myanmar, with the majority of the population identifying as the Theravada Buddhist. The Buddhism has a profound influence on the culture, traditions, and the daily life of the people. So the second one is Islam. Islam is the second largest religion in Myanmar, primarily practiced by the Rohingya minority in the Rakhine State and by other Muslim communities across the country. The third one, which is the Christianity, has a minority presence in Myanmar with a various Christian denominations, so, including Baptist, Roman Catholics, and Chin states have higher religious diversity is more pronounced in these regions. And lastly, the indigenous beliefs. So Myanmar also has a rich tapestry of indigenous beliefs and animism, especially among some of the ethnic minority groups. These beliefs often involve reverence for nature and spirit of the land. One of the traditional dance in Myanmar is pantomime dance or anyent. Is a popular form of entertainment in Myanmar. It combines dance, comedy, and satire, often featuring a troupe of performers. Today, Myanmar is under the Unitary Parliamentary Republic. So, it governed by as a single unit, president as the head of state, which the political power is vested the parliament. Economic history of Myanmar began in the pre-colonial period, has a long history of civilization dating back thousands of years. It was known for its trade routes and agriculture. Second one is the British colonialism. So Myanmar was colonized by the British. So the British introduced economic policies that benefited their interests, such as exporting natural resources like timber. And since 2011, Myanmar joined the economic reform. So Myanmar began a process of economic like agriculture, forestry, fishing, and trade routes. So as you can see here in the map, this is the trade routes of Myanmar. Now let's proceed to the Philippines. So Philippines takes its name from King Philip II, who was king of Spain during 16th century. So the Philippines is an archipelago located in Southeast Asia. To the west, it is bounded by the South China Sea. To the north, it is bounded by the Luzon Straits, which separates it from Taiwan. And to the east, it is bounded by the Philippine Sea. And to the south, it is bounded by the Sulu Sea. So the physical map of Philippines in central Mindanao, the Mount Apo located, and in eastern portion of Luzon, Sierra Madre located, the longest mountain range in the Philippines. The time zone of the Philippines is UTC +8. Historical overview of Philippines began in the pre-colonial period, Spanish colonization, 19th century, Philippine Revolution, World War II, and the Marcos and post-Marcos era. The pre-colonial period of the Philippines, the Filipinos of the 15th century must have engaged primarily in shifting cultivation, hunting, and fishing. Sedentary cultivation was the exception. So, only in the mountains of the northern Luzons where elaborate rice terraces were built some 2,000 years ago, where livelihood and social organization linked to a fixed territory. The lowland peoples live in the extended kinships groups known as barangays, each under the leadership of a datu or chieftain. The Spanish period in the Philippines, the Spanish at first viewed the Philippines as the stepping stone to the riches of the East Indies, but even after the Portuguese and Dutch had foreclosed the possibility, the Spanish still maintained their presence in the archipelago. So the Portuguese navigator and explorer Ferdinand Magellan headed the first Spanish foray to the Philippines when he made landfall on Cebu in March 1521. A short time later, he met an untimely death on the nearby island of Mactan. After King Philip II had dispatched three further expeditions that ended in disaster, he sent Miguel Lopez de Legazpi, who established the first permanent Spanish settlements in Cebu in 1565. So the Spanish city of Manila was founded in 1571, and by the end of the 16th century, most of the coastal and lowland areas from Luzon to northern Mindanao were under Spanish control, and Philippines is under Spanish rule for 333 years. The 19th century in the Philippines. By the late 18th century, political and economic changes in Europe were finally beginning to affect Spain and thus the Philippines. Important as a stimulus to trade was the gradual elimination of the monopoly enjoyed by the galleon to Acapulco. So the last galleon arrived in Manila in 1815. So and by the mid 1830s, Manila was open to foreign merchants almost without restrictions. 1863 was their public education in the Philippines, and even the new church controlled the curriculum. So less than one-fifth of those who went to school could read and write Spanish, and far fewer could speak it properly. So Filipino students arose what came to be known as the propaganda movement, magazines, newspapers, and poetry. So paper the La Solidaridad, which began publication in 1889. So as a result, these movements' most brilliant figure produced two political novels, Noli Me Tangere in 1887 and El Filibusterismo in 1891, which had a wide impact on the Philippines. The Philippine Revolution, so the late 19th century, saw growing discontent with Spanish rule, leading to the Philippine Revolution. So, notable figures like Andres Bonifacio and Emilio Aguinaldo played key roles. So the revolution eventually led to the declaration of Philippines independence on June 12, 1898. World War II had a significant impact on the Philippines. The Philippines were a U.S. colony at the time, and when the war broke out in the Pacific in 1941, the Philippines were quickly invaded by Japanese forces. The battles of Bataan and the subsequent Bataan Death March were some of the most notable events during the Japanese occupation of the Philippines. So, the Philippines remained under Japanese occupation until the United States, along with Filipino guerrilla forces, launched a campaign to liberate the island in 1944. So General MacArthur famously returned to the Philippines in October 1944, fulfilling his promise to the Filipino people that I shall return. So General MacArthur famously returned to the Philippines in October 1944. So the liberation of the Philippines was protracted and often brutal campaign with significant civilian casualties. So the war in the Philippines finally ended in 1945 with the surrender of Japanese forces. In Marcos and early post-Marcos era, in November 1965, Ferdinand E. Marcos was elected to the presidency. His administration faced grave economics problems that were exacerbated by corruption, tax evasion, and smuggling. So, in 1969, Marcos became the first elected president of the Philippines to win re-election. In 1972, Marcos declared martial law and people power revolution. So the Philippines faced a turbulent period under President Ferdinand Marcos, who declared martial law in 1972. It wasn't until people power revolution in 1986 that Marcos was ousted and democracy was restored with Corazon Aquino as president. The early kingdoms and empires in the Philippines include Kingdom of Tondo, Kingdom of Manila, Sultanate of Sulu, and Brunei Rahanate of Cebu. So the Kingdom of Tondo was one of the earliest recorded kingdoms in the Philippines history. It existed in the northern part of the Luzon Island and was known for its active trade with neighboring regions. Followed by the Kingdom of Manila, was a thriving kingdom located in what is now Manila. It was a prominent trade hub and had a complex social structure. And the Sultanate of Sulu, this Muslim Sultanate, was established in the southern Philippines, particularly in the Sulu archipelago. So it played a significant role in regional trade and had a cultural ties to Brunei. So, and also the Rahanate of Cebu, located in the Visayas region. So the Rahanate of Cebu was known for its interactions with Portuguese explorer Ferdinand Magellan in 1521, which marked the first European contact with the Philippines. Post-independence governance of the Philippines, the Third Republic, 1946 to 1972, the Philippines initially adopted a democratic system with a presidential form of government. So Manuel Rojas became the first president of the Third Republic. And the second one is the martial law era in 1972 and 1986. President Ferdinand Marcos declared martial law in 1972, which lasted until 1986. So this So, as what I said earlier, this period was marked by authoritarian rule. So, human rights abuses and widespread of corruptions in 1986. So, the People Power Revolution led by Corazon Aquino ousted Marcos from power. So, by the Fifth Republic in 1986, Corazon Aquino became the first female president and established the Fifth Republic. So this era saw the restoration of democracy, the drafting of a new constitution in 1987, and the return of a multi-party system.